Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and the co-host of the podcast Fear and Greed Business News. And as always, I'm with Canna Campbell, financial planner and founder of Sugar Mama TV, the financial literacy platform that you'll find on YouTube and podcasts, books, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and more. Hello, Canna.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Oh, look, I'm good. I'm intrigued about today's episode. Intrigued is probably makes it sound like it's more mysterious than it is, because we're actually talking about savings accounts, which are not the most mysterious of things, are they?
I was worried that this was going to be a bit boring and dull, but I don't think so at all. I think it's actually going to be very interesting and valuable.
Well, it should be, because the thing is, there are so many options for what to do with your money, aren't there? And that's probably a bit of an understatement, because there is just like you could buy shares, property, bonds, kind of you could put your money into your redraw account, your offset and use it for redraw potentially, all that kind of stuff. You can pay off debt, which we've talked about, and we talked about toxic debt and non-toxic debt and semi-toxic debt and all of these things. But I think it is time to give the humble savings account a little bit of love, a bit of attention.
I agree. It's overdue.
It feels like we've neglected it. And I suppose as part of savings accounts, term deposits and other things like that. And yes, it does feel like there is the potential for this to be a little bit dry. Just like, even
not with us. We'll find a way to make it fun.
Oh, God. Well, I suspect so, because part of it is kind of, I want to find out how they work. Term deposits as well. Term deposits feel like there's something that I have seen kind of advertised for like decades, and I've never kind of gone, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. That seems like a good idea. Today, I want to actually find out a little bit more about them and how they all work and who they're actually suited to. Same with like kind of the different types of savings accounts, online savers, and just your regular ones, the penalties, the fees, the benefits to it all. Look, I'm getting excited even just kind of listing these things.
Well, you know what? I often get asked, what is the best savings account? And obviously I can't say what the answer is because I don't know anything about that person. That becomes product advice. So hopefully today, after listening to this episode, you'll know what to look for in a good quality savings account.
Now, as you're listening, we should make it clear that, as you say, anything that we talk about is general in nature. It's never personal, investment, strategic or product advice. As you just mentioned, it is purely for financial education purposes only.
Exactly.
All right, so let's start with a little bit of a kind of a scenario, right? So say you've just kind of managed to save a little bit of money, because I'm assuming this is kind of based on savings. So you've managed to get a little bit of money.
Well, maybe you've inherited some money or won some money.
Or found it.
Don't impose your self-limiting beliefs on our listeners.
Okay, I'm manifesting that I've just found a bag full of money on the ground. Actually, no, I should take that to the police.
You could have got a bonus or, there's lots of things. Come on, open yourself up to the flow of money, Michael.
Clearly, I'm open to the flow of a bag of money on the ground. I'm very much open to the flow of money. Okay, so bag of money goes to the police. Anything else comes to us and we're able to kind of think about where it goes. The interest rates are not as low as they were, say, kind of 18 months. And kind of when you see those numbers and there were banks and other institutions kind of advertising savings accounts, and the interest rates were just so incredibly low that you'd just be like...
It's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. And you're just like, I don't really see the point in putting your money in there. They're not as low as they were. They are still kind of low compared to other forms of investments. Why would anyone consider a savings account? I'm probably actually coming from the wrong. This actually sounds a little bit negative. But why would people consider a savings account when those interest rates are actually typically lower than other forms of investments?
A savings account is essential. Everyone needs a savings account, even if you are, profoundly wealthy, because you need somewhere to park your short-term money.
Okay.
So for the average person like you or me, you'd have money, your emergency money. You'd keep in a savings account because it's liquid, you can access it quickly. For anything that you're saving up for that's a short-term need, so for example, having a baby, a wedding, a car, a holiday, saving up for a deposit for a home, that's something that would lend itself to a savings account because you don't have that market volatility that you might have, say, for example, with shares. You don't have that liquidity issue that you would have with something like, property. And you can hopefully earn a decent interest rate over the next couple of months until you're getting ready to use it.
So, okay then, it's probably a good way to then look at what we should be looking for in a savings account. What is kind of on that list? Is the first thing to consider the interest rate? And now I realise in hindsight, I've spent the last kind of 4 minutes just focusing intently on the interest rate,
Interest rate, yes.
which is probably a mistake.
Well, no, I think it's important to go to the interest rate at the end of the day, but because that's obviously the number one determinant as to how much potentially you're going to get back by using that particular financial product. But, you've got to go look beyond that. So,
but I suppose if you're just trying to save money for a holiday, or you're saving money for your wedding, or for anything like that, or even something kind of small, you're saving up for Christmas and things like that, where you were using essentially a savings account, the priority there is probably not going to be how much is this going to earn me in interest over the next 6 months while I save for it. It is just about having somewhere where the money is safe, the money is accessible, and it's going to be able to be retrieved, hopefully, with a little bit extra by then, right?
I think most people first thing they look at is the interest rate.
Okay, all right.
Because you obviously want to shop around for the bank account or savings account or term deposit that gives you the highest interest rate possible. So you're getting the maximum return on your investment. But actually is so much more involved. So you've got to look at, how much are you going to be putting into this account on a regular basis? Because some of these accounts will pay like a bonus interest if you put a certain amount of money per month and agree to that. Then you've also got to look at the interest rate, but also the compounding of the interest rate.
Okay.
Because that obviously helps increase your returns. So the more often it's compounded, the higher the interest rate you're going to get. Then you also need to think about the type of access that you want. So with a term deposit, what's going on?
Oh, no, I just had a question for you. You said how often it's compounded.
Yes.
Does that vary?
Yes.
Really?
So it's interesting one. You know how, you need to look when the home loan, you need to look at the same with interest, because the more often it's compounded, it's very tiny, the increase, but it's definitely an increase.
I mean, everyone learnt about compound interest in school, in maths. And typically it was in your textbook, and it would be like kind of Jane has $100 in her bank account and she's earning 10% per annum on that, and how much is she going to have after 10 years? And you had to kind of work that out. It was compounded annually.
But some are compounded monthly.
Well, this is what I was curious, that some actually do go monthly, more frequently than that, or is it typically monthly or annually, or?
It really varies.
Yeah.
But this is why you've got to look at the comparison rate.
Okay.
And particularly if you're looking across, those websites that allow you to compare on the one screen, say 8, 9, 10 different term deposits or savings accounts, they'll give you that comparison rate. So it's very quick and easy to identify. You don't need to pull out your calculator and remember how to do that formula.
No, okay. So, and general rule of thumb would be more frequent compounding is better.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Then
Noted.
also you've got to look at, there's some sort of honeymoon rate involved. So maybe that very sexy high interest rate is only for, say, 3 months or 6 months. And then it reverts to something that's actually quite low and not very competitive at all. So you do actually need to invest some time doing a little bit of research before you sign the dotted line.
And it'd be important, I suppose, to look past the honeymoon rate, wouldn't it? Because a savings account is probably going to be a long-term thing. You would
not necessarily.
God, really?
You make all these assumptions for our listeners, and that is just not on.
It is how I work. I make an assumption, I put it out there, and you either tell me that it's right, or more often than not, you tell me that it's wrong. Because I'm not the only one who makes assumptions. I'm speaking on behalf of everyone right now. Yeah, indeed.
But, say, for example, you're saving up for a holiday and you're going on that holiday in, say, September this year. So you need that money within 3 months or 4 months.
Yeah, but you're not going to close that account after that. I mean, you're just going to use that then to save for your next holiday or save for your next savings goal, right? Otherwise,
recycling your savings accounts. Is that something that you do with your 955,000 bank accounts?
Savings account. Okay, move on. No, it is something that I should start doing, is reusing savings accounts. Okay,
exactly. But there's also one other point I have to make. You also need to think about what sort of access you want to that account. So some people are very comfortable with an online savings account. They don't need that ATM debit card attached, whereas other people are, do want that. So you've got to think there's lots of things to consider before you, open up that account.
A lot of them are fee-free now, aren't they?
The online savings accounts, yeah.
Okay,
and you sometimes even get a little bit more interest. Sometimes it can almost compete with a term deposit rate, those online savings accounts.
All right, we're going to get to term deposits in a second, and I want to kind of go into the online savings accounts in a bit more detail as well. But before we move past fees, I don't remember the last time I paid a fee on a savings account at all. And that includes kind of your online only ones and your kind of general use ones. It does feel as though there is a shift away from charging fees for a savings account. Is that an assumption?
Everyone's in different situations with different needs. So sometimes it's kind of packaged up indirectly. So if you have your home loan with that banking institution and you also have a couple of savings account, they're able to waive those.
Okay.
And then, of course, if you have, certain levels of savings, they might waive those fees. So it really does vary. And also it depends. Like I remember once I went to the bank and to just do something quite sort of menial. And the bank teller said, oh my goodness, your bank account is like 17 years old. And she actually said, let me change this up for you because you're on such an old bank account. There's actually a much better product for you that actually is much cheaper. And I had actually been paying fees. So there you go.
Oh, okay. All right.
Neglected my own personal finances.
Oh, that is a worry.
I know.
Online savings accounts. This is quite an interesting space because there are some really attractive offers out there for online savings accounts. But they do come with a bit of red tape and a bit of kind of, you've got to look at some of those conditions on there because some of them you can't actually make withdrawals from for a certain period, or you can only,
Well,
you have
penalised sometimes.
Yes, yeah. You
miss out on the bonus interest.
It's not as though your money's locked up, but you have to make, for instance, a deposit of a certain amount every month and you can't withdraw anything for certain, like for 3 months. And if you do that, then you get a higher interest rate or something. There's a whole lot of different conditions.
There's lots of conditions. So the devil's in the details. You've got to, that's why I say you've got to invest time just checking and reading everything before you make any final decisions.
Yeah. And so the best way to do that is to go to one of those comparison websites.
And also read some reviews, and even just if you're in a position where you've got the time, pop into the branch and ask questions, because sometimes the bank tellers can be right up to speed with all the products and can sometimes actually direct you maybe in something that's a bit more appropriate.
You have to make appointments now, though, don't you? Often, if you want to go in and talk to a bank, and this is getting a little bit off topic, but
I feel like you're really like an old man today, like grumpy, whingy.
I have come in grumpy today. No, I haven't. I'm actually really upbeat. I mean, I'm smiling.
Okay, all right.
But when you go into your bank now, typically, unless you're there just to, I don't know. I mean, you can barely, one bank that I use, you can't even cash a check at that bank anymore.
Well, they're phasing them out now.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, don't phase them out until they're actually done. Otherwise, now I'm just stuck with a piece of paper. Anyway, let's move on to term deposits. As I said earlier, that you've seen term deposits advertised forever. How do they actually work? This is basically where your money is locked up, essentially, for a certain period of time. And if you do not touch it for that period, you get a pretty decent interest rate.
Correct.
What time periods are we talking?
It really varies. So the bank will have, particular offers and specials on, and sometimes you can actually go into the branch and see if you can negotiate or even call up the bank and negotiate a slightly better deal.
Okay, and so is there a certain kind of minimum usually that you need to, a minimum amount? So say it's kind of $10,000 or something that you need to have in there, and then it kind of gets locked away for a year or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years or something. And then I'm just trying to get an idea of some of the restrictions around it and why you would go for that, say, over a regular savings account. Is the interest rate that much better? Good
question. So these products are changing all the time. So I don't want to say, yes, you'll get a better deal with a term deposit, because tomorrow Bank XYZ could launch a new product, which is actually then better than, other ones that are out in the marketplace. So it is definitely a dynamic space, but the term can really vary from banking institution to banking institution, and so does the rate. So the longer you're prepared to put that money aside, typically the higher the interest rate. But there are situations where you can, again, this is why you've got to think clearly about this before you make any decisions. Some of them have, a penalty fee if you do need to break it. But that penalty fee gets smaller and smaller as you get closer and closer to your deposit term ending. That's why you've got to have these conversations before you sign up to this product, because you might actually think, look, I'm not going to, I've got $100,000 from a sale of a property. I'm not buying anything for at least another year. And then you go to put this in, for example, in a term deposit, thinking I'm not going to buy for a year. But then all of a sudden, 6 months later, the perfect property comes up.
Yeah.
and you think, oh my goodness, I need that money back out. So that's when you've got to go and speak to the bank and say, look, this has happened. I know I'm going to be hit with a penalty. How does that work? And it may be worth paying that penalty so that you can secure that property. Or you think, actually, you know what? Not worth. I'll just keep the money and stick to my original plan.
Do financial planners still recommend a term deposit?
Yes. I look how excited I just got.
I know your eyes just lit up. Okay,
do you not remember anything I teach you?
Yes, I do.
Clearly you don't. So
just not about this.
The sleep well strategy.
Ah, yes, the SWS. I remember it well.
For retirees, I, as a financial planner, would always recommend my clients have at least 2 years worth of living expenses set aside in cash in a savings account or a term deposit, should they wish, so that if there was market volatility or sudden change in situation, they've always got at least 2 years living expenses in liquid form to rely on. So this is where I would recommend a client use an online savings account or a term deposit, whatever was going to get them, the best return and really suited their needs. Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. Well, and that kind of leads then to my next assumption, which I think is an accurate one, is that if you are considering whether a term deposit is right for you, then it's probably worth a conversation then with a professional who can give you that advice and figure out how it fits in alongside other products and things that you are using. Because it's always felt like it's one of those things where I couldn't see the upside to it. I know that there is kind of an increased interest rate attached, but having your money locked up for that long always seemed. Remember, oh God, here we go on another tangent. Do you remember a couple of years ago where the federal government set up a scheme to help people get their deposits saved for their first home, but it required your money to be locked up for quite a long period of time, and as a result, people were saving and putting money into this scheme, but the market was outpacing the entire kind of program. So no matter how fast they were saving, they were up. Yeah, absolutely. And that always kind of reminded me essentially of kind of almost a glorified term deposit, that their money was locked up for that period and they weren't able to act on something if an opportunity came up quickly. So it does sound to me as though term deposits still do have value, but you might need some advice.
Yes, it could be restrictive depending on your situation. So that's why, a lot of people do like the flexibility of something like an online savings account, particularly when the interest rate is so close. But I will say there is something to that access and that, that control, because it takes away temptation.
Does the interest rate ever change? Once you're locked in, can it go up? So say you're locked into kind of a 5-year term deposit at extra, let's just say it's 5%, just for the argument sake. Or let's say 10% because it's higher. But during that time, kind of the official cash rate and official interest rates kind of move and change and everything. All of a sudden, interest rates are actually higher and you're still stuck in this term deposit that was kind of a good deal 4 or 5 years ago.
At the time.
Yeah. And suddenly you're like, I wish I hadn't done that. Does the interest rate ever change, or are you locked in there? It's just kind of like...
Locked in, baby. That's why it says restrictive.
Yeah. So it's like locking in your a fixed interest rate for your home loan. Exactly.
And what I have seen people do in the past, particularly with large amounts of money, and this was more of an issue when there was concerns over, if it was guaranteed and safe, is they will actually strategically put large amounts of money into various different term deposits to make the most of interest rate movements. They've put one in here at this rate for 6 months and this one for 2 years at this interest rate, and then they've held tight for, 6 months to see what the interest rates are doing. It becomes almost like a game of kind of like chess.
Yeah, I suppose it becomes very strategic then, doesn't it? It's something you said that just reminded me that, God, I'm just spearing off in all kinds of directions today, but that kind of worry about the security of money and the guarantees required, and just it makes you remember how different an environment we are in now compared to, say, after the GFC.
Yeah.
So, say, 15 years ago, where kind of people are like, what do we kind of do? And then the government kind of guaranteeing the safety of deposits.
Yeah, the fear.
Yeah, and suddenly you can see there would be absolute appeal to something that seemed on the outside to be nice and safe. Okay. All right, term deposits. How about that? I never thought I would get this excited about term deposits or savings accounts or online
accounts.
You're
glowing now.
Yeah, I know. You've got me very excited. We're going to take a very quick break. I'm going to calm down, and afterwards we are going to talk about kids and about kids' savings accounts, because I think everyone had kind of like a Dolomites account or one of those ones, the equivalent kind of for Commonwealth Bank. And I want to know kind of what, if you've got young kids, what you should be doing in terms of a savings account for them. And also, if not a savings account just for anyone, not just kids, then what else? What else should you be using? Don't answer it yet. I can see you're itching to jump in. We'll take a quick break and then we'll get into it. All right, Canna, we are talking today about savings accounts, and we've talked very enthusiastically about general savings accounts and online savings accounts and about term deposits. But I wanted to ask you about kids. Kind of what do you think about kids having savings accounts? Because we all had them. I think that might be a bit of an assumption, but generally speaking, I think everyone was kind of exposed to them, often through school and the Commonwealth Bank and the Dolomites kind of program. And so we all kind of got exposed to a savings account. We all got a savings account kind of set up. Is it still a good way to teach kids about saving, or should we be kind of aiming higher or something a bit more sophisticated these days?
So obviously, I think it's subject to your child's age and their genuine interest. But I took Rocco, my 10-year-old, off to our local bank and to open him up together a savings account. And he was so excited. He bought his wallet along, ready to put his new ATM key card.
Oh, fantastic.
No, you can't have a bank account in a child's name under 13. And I didn't know that.
Oh, really?
I know we had made an appointment and we're so excited.
Oh,
so
that's really disappointing.
It was crushing. And I felt really guilty. So basically, to cut a long story short, they can have an account, but it has to be in your name, so as trustee for that child. So sometimes that can, for me at the time, because I am a minimalist and I don't like having 955 bank accounts, I just said, look, why don't we stick, Rocco, with the savings account that I have always used to hold money for you, which I put money in there, little bits here and there throughout the year. And when there's $1,000, I go and buy him $1,000 worth of shares. I said, why don't we just keep that system going? And until you're 13, then you can have an ATM card. And he was fine with that because he finds the idea of investing and his little growing share portfolio very exciting. So there is definitely the option to have an account, a savings account for your child, which I highly recommend because I think it's a great educational tool and a great starting point. But as we all know, savings aren't as sexy as investing. And we really want to educate and empower our future generations around money and building money and protecting money and having that financial freedom.
All right, we might have to come back to this then in another episode because we have talked about kind of investing for your kids, but maybe we'll do one on kind of investing with your kids.
Yes, and also some of the apps that are available as well to help parents navigate the whole pocket money, chores, unpaid chores, spending, saving, donating.
That is a great idea.
Yes. Let us know what you think if you want this.
I want it, partly because I motivated by self-interest here. We are kind of at that stage now with our kids, and I have no idea what to do, kind of how to attach like a monetary value to different kind of chores and things, and also then kind of how to penalise, because I'm assuming that there's a very complex. I mean, clearly, if I've got 26 bank accounts, I'm not going to do anything the easy way. I'm going to have kind of a very complicated method of kind of finding them for different things and earning additional money and all those kinds of things. It's going to be very, very complicated.
We have like a complete financial ecosystem going on in our household with our children to the point where Rocco tries to offload his chores and then takes a cut of the pocket money. Yes.
Oh my God, he is an entrepreneur.
They try and negotiate. So we have a star system as well as obviously pocket money, but there is a trading system going on in our house between our children.
Oh, and that's actually, I would almost be okay with that because
I think it's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah,
Tom thinks it's disgraceful that they're trying to rip each other off. But
no, as long as it goes both ways and as long as the chores get done.
Exactly. Well.
Do they? No, by you, technically, yes. Coming through and picking up the pieces. Just quickly, if not a savings account, if not a term deposit, if not an online savings account, what should we be using instead? Should we use our kind of offset account for our home loan?
Yes, or a redraw facility, which works just the same way. Mm-hmm. Or if you're looking for something that is a little bit more advanced than and slightly higher risk and you're willing to get a bit of a return, you could look at things like bonds, like government bonds, corporate bonds. Then there's hybrids, which is a sort of blend between, you could say, bonds and shares. And then you've got managed funds, ETFs, listed investment companies. But as I go down that list, they're obviously not the same financial product as a savings account or a term deposit.
Also a lot harder to understand.
Yes.
Not necessarily hard to understand, but they're just going to require a bit more research.
A lot more research, a lot more time as well, because they're, medium to long-term investments and a lot more volatility. So, and also sometimes more greater fees, especially something like a managed fund.
Yeah, so maybe let's put those in the basket of kind of things to consider, perhaps if you're getting some professional advice as well.
Exactly.
And someone can walk you through that and also help you figure out if it is in fact right for you.
Yes, and those sorts of things are part of an overall strategy as well. So you would never, ever
go all in on
use your
bonds.
short-term savings and put them into something like shares. That would just be fraught with unnecessary risk.
Goes against the principle of diversification, where I just go, I am 100% invested in bonds and nothing else. That's it. That's all. Just bonds. If you still want to have access to your money, good access to your money, but a higher kind of return, I suppose, than a savings account, is that kind of your redraw and your offset accounts? Because you can still access your money quite easily in those, can't you?
Yes, absolutely. And you also need to keep in mind, we've spoken about this before, but you might have a term deposit, paying you 5%, for example. But, the average person right now is paying about 6 to 6.5% on their home loan. So from a taxation point of view, you're better off keeping that money in that redraw facility or that offset account, because that 5% that you earn is going to be taxed at your marginal tax rate. So for simplicity, let's call it, you get 2.5% back in the hand after your term deposit interest has been declared.
Yeah.
But then, if you look at what you're saving, 6% off that home loan, 9 times out of 10, you're better off using that redraw facility and offset account.
All right. I think, you know what, I'm surprised that we have covered savings accounts and online savings and term deposits and everything so comprehensively. I thought we'd be through this in about 4.5 minutes.
Underestimate me.
Well, yes. Also, I probably wasn't expecting to go off on as many tangents as I did.
We have a bad habit of that.
Yes, it is a joint bad habit, and certainly not my own. So really, we have covered kind of the savings accounts, and we've covered the interest rates, and the fact that the interest rate is really the first thing that you are looking at, but there are a lot of other things that you need to do, and you can compare with one of the comparison websites, look at reviews and things as well. But there's an awful lot of information if you go to any kind of bank's website, and you can really kind of get in there and see what the fees are. You can kind of see what the different kind of conditions are attached and how often the interest is compounding.
Compounded, yep.
Yeah, which is always very exciting to look at. And look at the accessibility of your money. And this really kind of then comes into effect when you're looking at online savings accounts as well, because they might have that higher interest rate, and it might be a higher interest rate for a short period of time. You might have to meet certain kind of criteria. You might have to put a certain amount of money in or not withdraw a certain amount over a certain period, and then you get the higher interest rates. But it is still worth looking at. But there's just probably a few more kind of conditions and things attached to it. And again, check out the fees, and often there may not actually be fees attached to an online savings account. Is that right? Because it's all online.
Exactly. There's overheads, like
Indeed.
branches and stuff,
and
ATM machines.
And term deposits as well. We talked about that, kind of the fact that this is essentially locking your money up for a certain period, whether it's a year or 5 years or 10 years or anything like that. But you are essentially putting it away at a fixed interest rate. And so it is going to be right for some people who perhaps want that kind of stability and want that kind of long-term kind of knowing what their money is going to be doing and what it's going to be earning over that period. Not so great if you need greater liquidity and you want more accessibility of your money. But talk to your bank. Actually go in there and talk to them about what some of those options are available to you, and they can kind of talk you through what's available. But never forget the value of getting some good financial advice as well, and figuring out kind of where this fits in with your overall strategy. And we will do another episode on kids, I think, because that we just touched on that very, very kind of lightly. But I think it would be a really interesting topic to try and get into, not just the savings accounts, but also then kind of teaching the value of money and how kind of doing more chores will earn you more. I'm assuming it's as simple as that in your house. Just the more chores you do, the more money you make. Is there a cap?
No, there's no cap. No.
Oh my God. So if one of your kids got really kind of just passionate about it and decided to work pretty much full time around the house, there's really no limit to what they could earn.
Oh, imagine the housework I'd get done.
Oh, wouldn't it be great?
It's so good. Rocco is actually so switched on around the house. Like, he teaches me now how to use certain things.
Oh, that is fantastic. That is a dream result. Savings hack. We like to finish every show with a savings hack.
Ah, yes, this one's really good.
So I'm assuming you have one. It's yours this
Certainly
week,
do.
not mine. Okay.
I don't know if I can release this person's name, so I'm going to call them JK. They sent me this on Instagram, and I thought this was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And I have experienced this myself, but I never thought about it too hard, but it's a good one.
Mm.
So when you're shopping online, put something into your cart and then just leave it. Walk away, leave it. And she said quite often what happens is you'll get an email saying, hi, have you forgotten something? And she said you can then leave it a little bit longer, and quite often they'll email you a discount code just to get you over the line. And she said she's actually managed to have a $20 shipping fee waived, and they've sent her more and more discount codes.
That is amazing.
And when I read that, I was like, of course, that's happened to me quite a few times. So I've just simply gotten distracted because that tends to happen to me a lot. And, they send an email saying, hello, don't forget,
this is
are
still
these
in your basket.
are these items still of interest to you? Hint, hint, shop now. So yes, brilliant. Everyone try it.
That is a fantastic tip. JK. Thank you,
JK.
JK. The next time, if you want to send it my way instead of Canna's way, because have you noticed, Canna, that this is getting increasingly competitive between the two of us?
No, I haven't noticed at all. No.
I doubt that. Because lately I've had more people contacting me via Instagram, and that is at Michael Thompson Author, and send me the tips via DM because I need all the help I can get. Because you have just these tips flooding through, and I have a trickle of tips coming through, and I appreciate every one I receive. I know you do too, but really, please send them to me. Give me some ammunition here.
You're just a little bit more desperate.
That's right. Thank you. You've actually pinpointed it. So yes, next week I hope to have a tip that I have received via my Instagram instead of yours, and let the competition continue. Now, if anyone wants more information, where would they find you? And I know I'm just sending people straight to your Instagram now, aren't I, to send you tips?
The fastest place to get in contact with me and share with me your own personal money-saving hack and tip and idea is at Sugar Mama TV.
And you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. Thank you very much for listening to How Do They Afford That? Remember to hit follow on the podcast. Leave us a review as well. Now, next week, we have something a little bit special. It's going to be very exciting. We are asking the question, is it time to quit your job? Which is actually kind of quite a provocative kind of question, isn't it?
It is.
Because you might feel a bit frustrated by kind of how much money you're earning, or the conditions, or the benefits, or kind of the advancement opportunities, the culture, all these kinds of things. And we have an expert. We've got a special guest joining us in the studio next week to answer some of these questions and hopefully give us a bit of a guide. It is going to be a great episode. Don't miss it.